Hey guys, I'm Greg Atkinson. I want to thank you for watching the First Impressions Conference 2019. We are here today with our church planners panel, and I'm excited for you guys to get to know some friends of mine and to learn from their journey and all the insights that they're going to share with you today. So first off, we're just going to get to know each other, and I want to introduce them to you. Javon, tell us about you, where you are, and the name of your church, and just give us a little overview introduction.
Hey, what's going on, y'all? My name is Jevon Washington. I pastor a church plant here in Seattle's Rainier Valley. I have been planting for a while here now, been involved in various churches in the area. So I get the great joy of being the lead pastor by default because I'm the crazy one who decided to start it and just continuing in on the master's mission. And then a special shout out to my homies at Radiant Printing who hooked our church plant up, with some awesome swag, flat out. Look at this, welcome badges, invitation cards, all that, man. So shout out to Radiant Printing. And so we are out here in Seattle, man. So I'm thankful to be here. It's good to be here, Greg.
Awesome. Thank you, Javon. Well, you mentioned Radiant Printing, so I'm going to introduce Jason next. Jason leads Radiant Printing, or started it, but he's a church planner, and I've had the opportunity to visit his church. And so, Jason, tell us about you.
Well, first of all, I didn't ask him to do that, so that's awesome. Secondly, I started a church called Access Church. We're in Lakeland, Florida, and we have a campus in the city called Brandon, Florida. And we didn't actually intend to start a church. We started a college Bible study in my living room, and people kept coming. So a lot of the stuff I've learned in regards to the stuff we're going to talk about today, I learned the hard way because we did it backwards for so long.
Awesome. Aaron, representing in beautiful Tampa, Florida. Tell us about you.
Well, somebody has to suffer for the gospel in Tampa, Florida. So here I am, God, send me. So it's been a fun journey. My wife and I moved here at the beginning of 2013, and we didn't know anybody in Tampa. And so started the church September of that year and went to 3 services. Now have 3 locations here in Tampa Bay and working on our 4th one. And it's been a lot of fun in the last 5 years since launching the church. So it's been a good journey. Love church planning. And it's been really fun. It's fun having you out here last year and able to help us out. So that was a lot of fun too. So.
Cool. You guys are doing incredible stuff. Last, J.R. Lee in the Atlanta, Georgia area. Well, you and I have known each other a long time. Tell us about your church.
Yeah, my name is J.R. Been at Freedom Church in Ackworth and then also in Kennesaw, Georgia now for quite a while. It seems God's blessing, and we're enjoying the journey, loving the ride, and excited to hang out with you a little bit today and learn from these guys.
Awesome. Thank you guys for being here. I want to ask just a basic question for all of those that are watching. Why do first impressions matter, especially in the context of a church plant? All of you guys are church planners. Why do first impressions matter? And a lot of people watching this are from small churches, and obviously a church plant starts small, so they may not be a plant that may be a little bit older congregation, but they might be small in size and can relate where you started. But Jason, I'm gonna start with you. Why do first impressions matter when you're starting out and then as you maintain?
Yeah, I would say this. I read an article recently in Psychology Today that says there is a whole psychology around first impressions. And when you meet a person, statistically, they say you judge them in the first 100 milliseconds. You're judging their competence, you're judging their likability, you're even judging their character and their friendliness. And I think that just definitely applies to church as well. And so when you think about a church plant that's getting started in a school or a movie theater or a YMCA, people are already apprehensive about going to a church that's not in a church building. It's just a weird thing. And so I think the goal of a good church plant is to create a place that once people get there, they forget altogether that they're at a high school or they're at the movie theater, and they drive onto the campus, and for that moment, they forget where they are, and they're just greeted with love, they're treated with kindness, and they're made to feel like they're at home.
Awesome. JR, tell us why first impressions matter in your context.
Yeah, I think the reality is that most of the guests decide whether they're ever going to come back before they ever hear a word that you preach. And so as a result, you could have the best sermon on the planet. You've studied for hours and it is a game changer. You feel good about it when you walk off the stage. But if they had a bad experience in the parking lot, or they had a bad experience in the lobby, or they just felt weird, or the signage was terrible, whatever the case may be, it doesn't matter how good that message was. It doesn't matter what it is that God could have done in their life if they were already turned off before they were able to even walk into the auditorium. So that's why we try to put our best people out front to make sure that we break down as many walls as we possibly can before they ever walk into our doors.
Yeah, that's good. We interviewed, or actually sent in a talk last May, Mark Waltz, who wrote the book First Impressions, and he talked about how you have that first 10 minutes, and they need to know that they matter to us before they hear they matter to God. As Stephen Furtick says, the sermon starts in the parking lot, and so such truth. Javon, why do first impressions matter to you? You're in the Pacific Northwest. Us guys over here in the Southeast, where you could say the Bible Belt, but you're doing it up there in the Pacific Northwest, a very difficult part of the country to reach people with the gospel. Why do they matter to you in your context?
Well, I think they matter to us in our context, especially more in the arts type of department. And it's part of even kind of the reason I know I was joking around and telling people about Radiant and stuff, but art is really important, just for example, to even people in Seattle. And so that kind of helps validate or people to understand whether or not you're like legitimate when that happens. And then so they want to know that that legitimacy actually means intentional, that you're actually intentional about being in a place and being around. And so I was also a bank teller before. I'm also a bivocational church planner. So being a bank teller, you have like less than like 30 seconds, 15 seconds, 5 seconds to sum somebody up real quick and figure out how you can build some kind of rapport. So people are looking for a connection. And the faster you can establish a connection while, like JR was saying, tear down those walls. And we live in the graveyard of mega church. So it's really hard to, engage people. So the more you can take around those barriers for people to really first experience you as genuine, authentic, and things of that nature, it's just a way easier thing to share the love of Jesus with them.
Awesome. Aaron, I've been to your church there in Tampa. You guys meet in a movie theater. You can share some of your story, but you put a lot of effort and energy into first impressions. You also do stuff with signage and banners and flags. But when people come to Radiant Church for the first time, why do first impressions matter? How do you view that as a lead pastor?
To be honest, when we started the church, first impressions really wasn't my thing. It was my wife's. She was constantly reminding me, Aaron, they're not going to care what you know until they know that you care. She'd say all those kind of things. You have good sermons, but they won't remember what you say. They're going to remember how you made them feel. And she just has this idea and this vision from the beginning. She's like, I think we got to do our best to beat Chick-fil-A as the nicest place in town. Like, is there a way? That's our standard, that when people think of the friendliest place in town, they think of Radiant Church. And so we kind of took off that Acts 15 verse where it says, let's not make it difficult for the Gentiles who are turning to the Lord. So we thought from the parking lot to when you walk in, there's free coffee, free donuts. We immediately, as soon as it triggers and they see the word free, they realize, oh, this church is giving something away instead of always trying to get something from me. Just another first impression, just to make people immediately bring those walls down. And our community, the greater Tampa Bay area has some great churches, but in our community that we launched in, 87% of the people didn't go to church anywhere. And a lot of those people have really bad church backgrounds. So we know we're going to have to win this war right away when they arrive on campus. So we went above and beyond, almost a little creepy, of how much we were loving on people when they walk in and smiling. But I'd rather err on that side.
I have a funny story I could tell about your church when we were there, because you were in an active movie theater for one of your campuses where you teach live. And I remember walking through, you were touring me throughout your church and your campus, and we were going from one theater to another theater where there was a classroom, but we had to walk through 50 Shades of Grey to get to the other to get to the other side of the building. And so you guys are doing it in a real theater.
If you're not careful, what theater you walk in, you walk out of church with very different content that you learned, depending on what auditorium you walked into.
Yeah. What strikes me about you guys is I've heard Jason live, I've heard Aaron live, I've heard JR online. You guys are phenomenal communicators, amazing communicators. But you get it. A lot of pastors don't get that. They need to hear they matter to us before they hear they matter to God. The sermon starts in the parking lot, as JR referenced, that you could have the best sermon, you could have worked on it all week. But if they are tuning you out, if they've had a negative experience. And so, Aaron, you referenced wanting to be known as the friendliest place in town. Usually Chick-fil-A wins that battle. But as I wrote about in a book I'm working on right now, why can't the church lead in that area? Why can't the church be the friendliest, most hospitable place? But when it comes to that, when it comes to creating a remarkable church experience for guests and for members, regular attenders, I want to know, what do you think plays into that? What do you think it takes to create a remarkable experience? Javon, I'll let you lead out. When you look at creating a remarkable experience, what can we do in that area?
Yeah, I think for us, our context is just a little bit different, and just kind of the things that have kind of negatively happened in regards to church recently in our area. And then there's just a lot of people who come from these different church backgrounds and whatnot, denominations. So one of the things that we have intentionally done has been to try to deprogram a lot of stuff. And we do that by using certain words and setting a certain culture, because words create culture, and then therefore culture creates and forms and shapes people. So the more and more people understood that the culture of our church was going to be intentionally together, as opposed to, so much talk about all the activity, but more about being. And so we really emphasized and focused on that. And so, our first purchase actually as a church was an app, and we used that to connect with everybody. And so it was really trying to say, hey, we want to make an intentional way of trying to connect with everybody. And if you want to connect, then it's on you to download it so you can stay with us, and so we can continue to build this relationship. So for us, it was really trying to create a culture where people could buy in, rather than me trying to sell them on why they should be part of it.
Yeah, and as anybody watching this knows, our theme for this year is the hospitality culture. It's all about creating that culture. So, JR, what is it that you guys do, and what is it you think it takes to create a remarkable experience for our guests?
I think the nuances and intricacies of how that works out for each church might look different. I just think that the main thing for us and for everybody that's watching is knowing that the attention to detail, that it matters, that all the little stuff, people say, don't sweat the small stuff. Well, that's a ridiculous plan when it comes to hospitality. You got to make sure that, I think I referenced this a minute ago, that your signage is friendly, that it's not insider focused, that making sure that you have greeters that smile, parking lot people that are not standing together in a huddle, just telling you to go that way. Just everything saying the exact same thing from the parking lot all the way into the auditorium and then back out to the parking lot, that it's not conflicting messages. And so it's really just the really small details that if you can nail those, I think that you're really headed in the right direction.
Yeah, and I'm remembering touring your church when you were walking me around Freedom. I mentioned Aaron meets in a movie theater. You guys, your facility used to be a car dealership, right?
Correct.
That you kind of transformed. It does not look like it now. It looks like a modern church, and you have really used signage very well, and the environment is very conducive to worship and to creating those experiences. But if you hadn't have told me it was a car dealership, I would have never known.
Right.
Jason, what does it take to create a remarkable experience?
I think that it takes a ton of work. And if you're in a permanent facility or a portable facility, it still takes a ton of work. But I think the secret is creating a culture that connects the dots between what we're doing and why it matters. And so sometimes you ask people like, okay, I know you don't see your friends throughout the week. You see them on Sundays, But when we're here for Sundays, we're serving people. So we've got to separate. We can't stand together in the parking lot, like he said. But you've got to connect the why. Otherwise, it just feels like it's a job that they're not getting paid for. And so one of the things that we do that has just helped our culture so much is in between services or before the first service, we celebrate the number of salvations from the previous service. And so one of the things that's just been so great is imagine first service goes off. We have 12 people make a decision to surrender their life to Jesus. It is so fun to have our team run around to the setup and tear down team or to those who are serving in the nursery and say, guys, listen, you're making such a difference in the lives of people. 12 people made a decision to follow Jesus, and you're a huge part of that. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I think when people connect the dots and they know why they're doing what they're doing and why it matters, they'll serve with everything they've got.
Absolutely. I always talk about teach the why before the what. When we lead and train volunteers, teach the why before the what. Aaron, what creates a remarkable experience for you guys?
Well, when we started the church, we had such a focus on hospitality, and I feel like we heard so many stories of wins because people going above and beyond. And where we failed is that it was so driven on a certain couple people's personalities. So they were hospitable and they would win, and we'd think our church is hospitable, but only a fraction of the people were getting that experience. So when we went to 3 services, 4 services, 5 services, now multiple locations, we had to figure out a way to intentionally create a standard for our hospitality across the board. So if you go to Chick-fil-A, I know we keep mentioning it, but if you say thank you, there's an automatic response that everybody says at every Chick-fil-A around the globe. And it's the same sentence. It's my pleasure. Yeah. So I thought if they systemized it, we got to do the same. So we as a team got together and go, what makes us hospitable? So for us, we came up with 5 things. We call it the high 5, actually on everybody's lanyards that they do. This is after you left, Greg, and came. We created this whole system where we systemized it. Now it's across the board with just 5 things that we do. And I'll just run through them real quick. We smile. We make sure we always smile. We make eye contact. We always ask. So if people are there, we don't ask them, if it's your first time, we ask them how long you've been coming. That's our starter. We walk. We don't ever point people to places. We walk them to places. I just use a Home Depot experience. I don't want to be pointed to aisle 14. I want to be walked there, and I want you to show me exactly where the tool is. If I would have known where it is, I wouldn't have asked you. And right. The last is we do it for the one. And we'd go above and beyond and try to be exceptional for the one. So, and this is reiterated every single Sunday so we could sustainably make this happen across every location. Yeah,
that's good. And, Andy Stanley has said vision leaks. You said it's reiterated every Sunday. Every Sunday. Yep. That's so huge. Jason, I want to come back to you because what we're going to talk about now, because most of you probably started in this kind of environment, and I know a lot of people watching online have started in an environment like this or maybe still are in an environment. But what would you say to those in a portable environment? Jason, when I visited Access Church in Lakeland, Florida, you guys were meeting in a high school. So you know what it's like to set up and tear down and still have that bar of excellence. We do things with excellence. So what would you say to those that are in a portable setting and making this a priority and shooting for excellence?
Yeah, I would say portable isn't an excuse. And I think that's really important because a lot of us think that, well, I'm portable or our church is small or we have a small budget. I do think that sometimes the idea of excellence is a bit of an illusion because excellent to me may mean something entirely different than what excellent means to you. Right. So we try to use words like we're resourceful and we're always getting better. We're resourceful and we're always improving. What I think it takes to be portable and excellent, though, is you need to, first of all, start to see through the eyes of a guest. And so one of the most important things you can do is have someone, especially someone who is not a church person, someone who is far from God, have them come to your church and have them give all of their opinions on what they experienced. But I think that the whole experience, and we've said, the service starts in the parking lot. I actually think it starts in their first impression online, whether that's on social media, whether that's their website. And I think that the message that's conveyed through the website and social media needs to get translated to the outdoor flags, to the parking directional signs that they get to. I think that, signs are good. I think people are better. So when you can put people outside with signs and point them the right direction, I think all of your signs need to be consistent because ultimately excellence in signage creates comfort for people. And if people are apprehensive about coming to a portable church, that signage and those people who are walking with them and sharing with them and answering their questions, that creates comfort for people. And again, I said this to the first question, my hope when we're meeting in a high school is that people for a few minutes forget that they're meeting in a high school and they think, I really love this church. You know, we want to help people get over that.
That's good. For those of you watching online, we have a conference hashtag. I'm going to encourage you. There are so many tweetable quotes that are coming out of these guys' mouth. And for those of you that are taking notes, please catch some of this wisdom and this insight happening. Javon, what is it like? What would you say to encourage people that are maybe in a portable environment?
Yeah, I would kind of, again, even like what Jason was saying, kind of help people understand that we're resourceful and then we're always going to continue to grow and get better. Because, you know, not everything happens super, super fast. I mean, like when we're talking about church planting, I mean, we're talking about you're starting something in the ground and only God can give the rain and God can bring the elements in order for these things to come about. So I do think you have to be honest and just say, hey, here's where we're at. But again, honesty and stuff doesn't mean you can't get scrappy. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, get some people to help you in certain ways as far as whatever you might need. But I do think that creating that atmosphere of, you know, we use what we got and we work together is one of those things that's very important. And I agree, too, with what Jason is saying, that people are better than signs. And at the same time, it starts online. It starts in your app. It starts all your stuff needs to be, you know, top notch, you know, but again, that might be you having to be the one that learns how to use Adobe Premiere. That might be you who has to learn how to do sponsored ads on Facebook or on Instagram. You have to learn these things in order to create and set the table. And so I actually served as a pastoral resident at a church called Fellowship Memphis in Memphis, Tennessee. And one of my jobs as a pastoral resident was setting chairs up every single week. And what I realized and what it had prepared me for is when I was setting up chairs in our building for the first time was the Lord had showed me how to actually set the table before the people came to feast from the true bread and drink of his grace. And so it was one of those things even too that was just kind of crazy. And so you start to learn and see those things. But for our people, we just know that we want to be hospitable. That also means that we have to tell the truth and be real.
That's good. That's good. And both of you had mentioned online presence. You know, last May at our conference, our first conference, we had an online presence panel. We had a communications panel. We heard from Nona Jones from Facebook. Aaron and Jason know when I came in and did a consultation, the first half of the report is online presence, where I look at your social media and website. That is truly the first impression and where it all starts. JR, what would you say to those that are in a portable environment? They're in setup, tear down mode. How do you raise that level of excellence and leading in that kind of environment?
Yeah, I think for us, we just let people know that excellence is doing the very best you can with the resources that you have. That's all it is. I don't have to compare myself to anybody else, but I do need to make sure that what we're doing is the best that we can possibly do. And so because when we were in our portable days, we might have somebody that goes in and examines the pipe and drape to make sure that there's not these ridiculous gaps in between so that you see everything happening behind the scenes, or that you're really slow on your transitions, or you just have confusing language on all your stuff. So just really evaluating it. And sometimes it's sitting down. What we would do is quarterly, we would have an offsite meeting and we would go through every single thing, everything that we gave away to first-time guests and stuff that we sent away to first-time givers, whatever. And we would say, does this make sense? And does this make sense to somebody to whom it wouldn't make sense because they don't necessarily have a church background? So just trying to make sure that we did the best that we possibly can or that we could, and then that we continue to do that even until now. Whether you're portable or permanent, doesn't really matter.
That's good. That's good. Now, Aaron, you guys in Tampa Bay area, I visited your broadcast campus. You were meeting in a movie theater. I visited your other campus. At the time you had 2. You were meeting in a high school. Now you have 3, looking at 4. How do you set that tone in a portable environment?
So I think for us, we aren't going to stress about things that we can't change. We can't change that it's portable. We can't change that it's a high school. We can't change it's the auditorium. But we're going to really focus on the small things that we can do to distract people from the big things that we can't change. So small things, we're going to make sure it smells good. So we bought scent machines. Every location you go to, I mean, it just overwhelms people with the good smell. It's the Weston scent. And that's a branded kind of scent machines. They're expensive. But when people walk in, the first thing they notice is it doesn't smell like popcorn. It doesn't smell like a movie theater. It doesn't smell like a high school. So scent is an easy one, doing little photo walls that are just easy backdrops that people can take pictures of. If they're going to take a backdrop, I don't want the brick building of the school in that backdrop where people go, I think that's a high school they're at. I want a cool little backdrop that we get those made. And so we just find little things that can distract people from the big things we can't change and make the little things win. So that's kind of how we focused on it.
That's good. I, over the years, visiting churches, have visited several and consulted with several that are in schools. And there's nothing worse than somebody going to the restroom and it smells like a middle school boys' restroom.
Disgusting.
Or a high school boys' restroom. So I love that you're using scent machines. I mentioned that in my book, Secrets of a Secret Shopper. That's huge. This conference I mentioned is about the hospitality culture. So we're hitting on culture. You guys had and have the opportunity to create the culture at your church plant. Tell us what that was like, and do you find that creating the culture, setting the culture is an ongoing task? Javon, what was it like? What is it like currently to create culture?
Yeah, well, just kind of like what you said, Andy Stanley's, famous quote, that vision leaks. So you're continually trying to cast more and more and more vision and explain to people, what you're doing. But creating a culture, whether you like it or not, the culture will be locked in a matter of months. And so you're trying to figure out how to continue to change and do things to create a culture, use words, use verbiage that creates culture, create different habits that create culture, but also, embed into you're creating a culture, how you shift and pivot. Because if you don't shift and pivot well, having that being a piece of your culture, once you make a shift, it's like devastation. One of the things John Bryson would always say is that people don't hate change. They just hate the loss that change creates. But again, if you have a culture that is inflexible because you've not built that into your culture, then it won't be something that, people will even just vibe with. And so, as we're trying to create a culture of multi-ethnicity, fighting for justice, I know those are big things, people freaking out right now, but the Bible's very clear and we just don't shy away from it. So we say the things that need to be said. And it's just, Jesus was the most hospitable person and created the most amazing cultures. And he never shamed people into changing. He just continually invited them to partake of the good news of his kingdom. And so we try to create the culture around the good news of Jesus's kingdom. The King has come, and let's get to work because he's got some work that he wants for us to do. But we got to tell the truth. We got to use the right words, and we got to be about his business. And so that's how we're trying to create culture at our church.
That's beautiful. I remember visiting Aaron's church in Tampa and seeing the multi-ethnic, multicultural, multilingual congregations there. That is so amazing to see in Florida. And I've watched JR for a long time online, advocating for a multi-ethnic congregation and reflecting the community and seeing some stuff that he's done intentionally there to try to bridge the gap and get people talking. JR, what's it like there at Freedom when you are creating culture and as you continue to speak into the DNA of your church?
Yeah, I think for us, the main thing that I've had to realize is that it's never ending. And right about the time that you think you're really nailing it when it comes to culture, that's the time to just step on the gas. The tendency for us, and we've made mistakes before where we kind of stepped off, we took our foot off the gas for just a minute. And when you do, culture can go a different direction quick. If culture is a combination of what you create and what you allow, some of the stuff that you allow, some of the things that you turn a blind eye to, even the smallest stuff can sabotage you. And so for us, it's just really dialing in and saying, this is who we want to be. This is our standard. This is our standard for hospitality. This is our standard with the gospel. This is our standard for how we do music or whatever the case may be. Just saying, this is who we are. This is how we're going to do it. And we're going to change the world together. But then just keeping it in your mind that just because you're doing good at it right now doesn't mean that you should put yourself in cruise control, because it can go a different direction real quick.
Yeah, that's good. Aaron, I want to know what you did to create culture, how you're continuing to do it, and remind us, how old is your congregation? How old is your original church plant?
We celebrated 5 years last September. So
Yeah.
September 2018 was our 5-year anniversary. So, culture has taken a long time. I'll tell you about a big mistake in it is hearing all these cool things that other people are doing and trying to make that part of my culture.
Right.
So part of what we've done well finally is realizing, okay, what are the few things that we can be known for? We can't be known for everything. So, Javon's talking about how they're known for their fights and social justice and this kind of stuff. I love that. I celebrate it. I'm like, what can I be known for? And because every time I'd find something cool and I go to this church and I go to that place, I go, oh, I need to make that part of my culture. And we try really hard and I do a big push on it and it wouldn't work. So I thought, you know what, let's just find out who we are. Culture's not more of what we do, it's who you are. So, culture is really, it's the pastor. So Katie and I are friendly people. We're life-giving people. We laugh. We don't take ourselves nearly as serious as we should. We joke around. From the pulpit, you're going to hear a lot of God's truths, but you're going to laugh a lot. And you're going to sit there and go, should he have said that on stage? That's just who we are.
Yeah.
You're never going to walk into our church and feel like someone doesn't care about you. We're going to be I just feel like these are cultural things for us. We're a very generous church. You're just going to go in, you're going to find it. If you have a need, we're going to help meet it. But you're always going to hear needs on Sunday of how we can meet things around the world. So we just found things that were crucial to us. And that means we have to say no to a lot of other really good things that other churches are doing. But we just know they're not us. Let's figure out what we are. And if you want a hospitality culture in your church, first of all, you got to be hospitable. You got to be a nice person. And then you got to make sure that don't steer from it because you hear a new thing at a new conference somewhere else. Make it your mission, make it a core value, and work it until you go, oh, we nailed it. And then once you nail it, realize you got to make it better every time. So
That's good. That's good. And, I'm laughing because I remember you are one of the most lively, funny, off the charts pastors I've ever seen live. It is the energy level. And I think if I remember right, you had an 8 a.m. or 8:30 service. But by the time you had the 5 p.m. service, you still had that same energy. And I don't know how many Red Bulls you drink. I don't know how you do it, but when you come there, and we're going to talk about this in just a second, but I know like Jason and Aaron are ARC churches, and ARC is all about life-giving. But it exudes generosity, hospitality, fun, vibrancy. And so, Jason, how did you create culture at Access, and how are you continuing to infuse that?
Yeah, I think culture is birthed out of the values that you actually embody. And so how many times have you visited and secret shopped a church, Greg, where they had aspirational values? We want to be friendly. We want to be generous. We want to be life-giving. But when you dug into it, they were nothing like it. They're aspirational goals, but they're not actually real life lived out values. Mm-hmm. And so for us, we just really try to live out the values that we have as a church. And so I think when you do this, when you say, these are the things that we want to be known for. So we want to be friendly because every Sunday is someone's first Sunday. We want to be concerned and caring because you never know the baggage that someone's walked in with. When we explain these things and then we celebrate, you know the phrase, you raise what you praise. And so every chance we get to honor and celebrate someone, we do it. And every year we do an event. Our church is called Access, and we do an event called the Accessees. And the Accessees, we give away fun awards. We give away silly awards. One year we did the skinniest jeans. We did an award called the Christ-like Award, and it wasn't the most like Jesus. It was for the hipster who looked the most like Jesus. But we also try to catch people doing really specific things that reinforce the values that we don't just aspire to, but that we actually want to live out. And then after we give the award, we say, everybody look at this guy. He did it. You never can underestimate the impact that can make. And so that's what we do.
That's awesome. We talk about in my church, what gets rewarded gets repeated. What gets rewarded gets repeated. You said what gets raised gets praised. Is it praise gets raised? Which was it?
What you praise, you raise.
What you praise, you raise. That's good. That's good. So many tweetable quotes. Now I want to preface this next part with one of the most in-depth, comprehensive books I read on vision was Will Mancini's book, Church Unique. And in the very beginning, he talks about ministry schizophrenia. And that's when you try to be a little bit Saddleback and a little bit Life Church and a little bit North Point and a little bit Highlands. And you got this ministry schizophrenia going on that Aaron touched on and addressed. But I want to preface that that's not the right way. But I want just a little insight into who are some churches, whether it be one or a few, that you look at and think, we like this, we resonate with this, we've learned from this. I know there's some ARC influence here and some others, and Javon got to see up close a fellowship in Memphis and different influences. But what is a church or a leader? I know JR has a huge network of mentors. He is, ever since I've known him in early 2000, seen him reach out to people to learn from and just to be teachable and coachable. It's one of the things I love about JR, putting himself in a position to learn. But who are some people that you respect and look up to? Maybe you don't copy them, but who do you respect and look up to and say, that's something admirable, that's something noble, that's something that kind of that game recognizes game of, we like that, that's pretty cool. Javon, let's start with you.
Man, there's way too many. I know you said you don't take certain things from other things, but, I know it's not stealing because we're Christians, so we call it gleaning. But I glean a lot because I've had a lot of different background experiences, especially cross-denominationally, from Presbyterian to Baptist to Reformed Baptist to Calvary Chapel. So there's a lot of different people that have kind of helped me, really see some of those things. I would say I learned a lot from Dr. Eric Mason, and I learned a lot from Fellowship Monrovia, Pastor Albert Tate, Pastor Doug Logan from Epiphany Camden, but he's now turned over the church to other people. My father in the faith, Pastor Wayne Taylor from Calvary Fellowship. I mean, there's so many people that I've learned a ton from that, we've just kind of took and used in our church, because I think one of the cool things about this is, even that when it comes to certain doctrines and stuff at our church, I don't impose my certain doctrines on the church as our core beliefs. We try to say, how do we flourish? And so we flourish by being who you are. And because I've had such a wide variety and experience across the church world, I have allowed that to be me and allowed those things to kind of come to the forefront in our experience in the building of culture and gleaning, stealing some of those things in our church.
Cool. Thank you, Javon. JR, you have learned from some of the best. I know you have a lot of pastors that you respect and look for. What is something that has jumped out to you or something that has meant a lot to you that you've seen and thought, wow, that's pretty cool, pretty remarkable?
Yeah, like Javon said, there's so many different people, but specifically in the area of honor and hospitality, I feel like this is almost a cop-out answer because anybody that's been there could say it. But what Pastor Stephen Furtick is doing at Elevation is ridiculous. What God's able to do through them and through their people, and how they are bought in hook, line, and sinker on making a difference in the lives of people, because they know that every week is somebody's one day. It revolutionized us and helped us tremendously, not only to show us what to do, but to keep us from making a lot of the mistakes that we would have made had we not been on far too many site visits to even count, honestly.
Yeah. And I know visiting Access Church with Jason, there was a lot of Elevation influence. I will say this, I say it all the time on Facebook. I live in the Charlotte area. I go to Elevation often. If you ever want to come visit, let me know. We can hang out. I'll take you to eat. But I recommend that somebody takes that word of encouragement that JR said to make a site visit. Actually experience it for yourself. But Jason, what is somebody that you've learned from and that you respect?
So many churches. I've been to Aaron Burke's church here in this conversation many times. They're over the top friendly. One of the best experiences for me was last summer. I was speaking at a church in Raleigh, North Carolina. They had morning services. And so that evening I went to an Elevation service in Raleigh. And I was really excited because it, at that time, was one of the farthest away campuses in North Carolina. It was in a middle school, so it wasn't permanent. And it was at 5 o'clock, which I assumed would have been the lowest attended service. So my hope was to see kind of the worst version of their amazing church product is not the right word, but their church experience. And I went, and it was a smaller service, but every single thing was still done with excellence. My son was with me. He still talks about the slap bracelet that he got and how much fun that he had. And I just recognized something that we all say and we all know, but people don't remember specifics. They'll always remember, though, how you make them feel. And so they are the masters at, from the way you feel when you drive on the campus where they say, turn on your flashers for VIP parking, all the way through the whole experience, even down to giving you gifts on the way out the door, just to bless you, just to say thanks for coming with no expectation, nothing in return, no money exchanged. They're better than anybody.
Yeah, and I've actually been to Elevation Toronto, and it carries all the way. You talked about the distance and how far. It's amazing to see. And I was a campus pastor at 2 different churches, and to see the DNA be carried to satellite campuses is an amazing thing. Several of you guys here are Multisite. Aaron, who do you look to? Who has inspired you?
So many churches. We took, and I know a lot of church planners are watching this, so we took the months before we launched our church and we traveled and went church to church to church, a lot of portable church settings. It's very hard to, I feel like, go into a church like a Highlands or an Elevation. You walk into their, facilities and you're going, well, I'm going to start in a high school. How does this connect? So we went to a lot of portable experiences. And I'll tell you, obviously, when you look at Highlands and you look at Elevation, you look at Bayside Church in Bradenton, it's the small things. It's the way they greet people. I learned a lot more. I learned a lot from them, and we've copied a lot. I learned a lot more from going to places and realizing I never want to do that. I remember going to one church, and I went up to the front door of the movie theater, and nobody was there, and I had to reach down and open the door. And I thought, you know what? If I ever start a church, nobody's ever going to touch a door. That'll just be a value of mine. We'll always have people at doors opening them up. And that becomes one of our values. I remember another church we went to, it was in a movie theater. And after the service, I saw a nursery worker walking around with my baby in the foyer. And my baby was 6 months old. And she was tapping people on the shoulder going, hey, is this your child? Is this your child? This is after the service. I freaked out. And I sat there and go, how in the world? So I turned to Katie. We got her child. And I said, this is the most disorganized. If we ever start a church, we're going to make sure we take care of people's kids. So I think you can learn a lot. We get inspired a lot by other people. You'll learn a lot by trying out some churches and realize I never want to do that ever that way. And it'll help you create a great life-giving culture yourself.
Man, that's good. That's gold. God, that's good. That's good. Javon, we're wrapping up. We're coming down the home stretch. A lot of lead pastors watching this. Obviously, a lot of church planners are going to zero in on this and watch this particular session. But a lot of senior pastors, lead pastors, watch the First Impressions Conference. What's one word, one takeaway, one thought that you would like to leave with a pastor that's watching this?
I would say, man, you're a mess, but you're deeply loved by God. And there are going to be a lot of things that you do wrong. There's going to be a lot of things that you go through. Church planting is one of the hardest things that you'll probably ever do. And the more and more you're reminded of just God's love for you, and now he's just called you to serve other people, you'll be humble to continue to learn, to reject what you need to reject, to embrace what you need to embrace. And it'll be an encouragement. But, just so you know, it's if your church closes, it's still okay. It's still okay. So therefore, be free to do everything the best you possibly can. Like my brother J.R. Lee was saying, do the best you can with what you got, and it's going to be okay.
Thank you. Jason Burns, what word would you leave with pastors that are watching this?
Yeah, in regards to creating a culture of hospitality, like your conference is about, I would say this. I think that sometimes you need to get fresh eyes on what you're doing. So, Greg, you're the best of the best when it comes to coming on site and doing a visit and just providing a detailed feedback. I think sometimes we think we're better than we actually are. So we ask, how are we doing in this area? And someone says, oh, we're great. They pat you on the back and they go on their way. So you think you're good, but you just need fresh eyes. The other thing I would add to it too is I think senior pastors, they need to not disconnect themselves from the people in the real world. I had a pastor friend who stepped out of ministry for a season, and he got a job working on roofs. And he said, pastors often say, it's so busy. I'm so tired. Things are so busy. And then he spent a season on the roof with people, and he's like, man, that's busy. That's hard work. Sometimes we just don't understand. I also think, though, sometimes we separate ourselves from the real world. 5 months ago, I joined a new gym, and it's like God opened my eyes to the people in this gym to see, eternity's real. Heaven and hell are realities. And so to see them and then to be connected to them, all of a sudden 10 of them are now coming to our church. And I had a mini panic attack the first Sunday that 10 of them rolled in together. They told me for 2 weeks they were going to come on this specific Sunday. And that specific Sunday, I made sure everything was perfect. I was all over every little detail because that Sunday mattered, because my friends were coming. And I think we have to remember every Sunday is somebody's first Sunday coming. And so if you can communicate that heart and that vision, if you can help people to realize that every single Sunday, eternity hangs in the balance, it's a big deal.
It is. It's a huge deal. I talk about that in an article I wrote for Christianity Today, the cringe factor. When a guest comes that you have personally invited, you want everything to be perfect. You want it all to be perfect. It counts. It matters. Every Sunday is somebody's first Sunday. Aaron, what word would you leave with the lead pastor?
I think we all have a desire to reach the world. And I would just say, let your hospitality culture start with the person that's right in front of you at that moment. I had a great pastor before I started the church, and I went and met with him. He had a great church reaching a city. And I just sat down and I said, how do I reach it? He goes, make the person that's right in front of you at that moment the most important person in the room. And it's the whole, do for one what you wish you could do for everyone idea. And I think with hospitality, I've just realized, I can't greet every single person, but I can make that one person right in front of me feel loved and valued. And I think if I show that example to our team, they'll do the same. And it starts from the top down. And so don't teach hospitality, be hospitable. And, don't just be friendly, actually make friends, and watch how your church will become what you are. And so I think it's some good advice for us.
That's so good. That's so good. Don't just be friendly, actually make friends. JR, you get the last word. What do you want to leave these pastors with?
Yeah, I think everything that these guys have said has been amazing. So I don't want to try to build upon it. I will just say this to everybody watching, you can do this. The fact that you've been called is proof that you are capable. God would not have asked something from you that he had not already deposited in you. Therefore, in Christ, you have what it takes. God can use you. He already is, but he's just now getting started in what it is that he's going to build for your future and for the kingdom of God moving forward. And so just keep going. Trust God. Keep going. Do your thing. Leverage who you are, and God's going to use you in an amazing way.
Awesome. Guys, thank you so much from coast to coast. I can't thank you enough. Thank you for pouring into our attendees. And these guys are all searchable online, on Twitter, on Facebook. Check out these churches, Flourish, Freedom, Radiant, Access. Check them out. Doing incredible stuff for the kingdom. Thank you all.